for me to go to University of Ibadan and did the scholarship interview. Federal government scholarship interview wasn't successful, and I couldn't understand why, because nearly all my classmates got scholarships, federal government scholarships, and then there was this moment where should I look at his list or should I not look at his list? So I said, let me see that list. So I gave it to him, to the university, and in 65 finished the master's. No, but it's been done before. And said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I already have 2 jobs. He said, well, it seems as if you have to add a 3rd one. So get a leave of absence from those 2, come to the Nigeria Civil Service Cabinet Office and give us some ideas of how to disengage from the military, how they can disengage and go back to the barracks and the political process, which I then did. I came back in 73. So I was working in the political division, the Cabinet Office, where we were working out a program of disengagement.
Okay, I think all of these documentaries, there's a much longer one, even for Chief Wale Olanipekun. All of these will be uploaded on the internet and we can get the fuller documentaries to watch at our leisure. For the sake of time, we're going to cut a little and continue with the program as documented here. Well, opening remarks. Like I say, I'm usually very brief with these opening remarks. Today it might take slightly longer. I think I should first introduce the panelists that are here. By the way, is Umar Labi here. Usually quite time, and she's been here many times for especially our programs of women. The others who are here. We start my left. You know, when Nigerians say somebody needs no introduction, it means they're going to spend the whole day introducing the person. I try not to follow the Nigerian example. Dr. Joe Abba, we all know from the work he has done. We're trying to get government to behave more properly. Dr. Jomo, right, is a distinguished lawyer herself, and actually standing in for Dr. Olanipekun. Dr. Emeka, we all know, was a long-running managing director of The Guardian. Once he retired, finally retired. And then right next to him, okay, Boma is joining us online. So it's also Clement Nwankwo joining us online. So Boma, welcome. I thought that it's not like you, Mrs. Umar Labi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you, Prof. I've been here since 1 o'clock. So
okay. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
And over there, it's Binga Defy, who has been president of Chairman, he called the Guild of Editors again. President of Nigerian Guild of Editors, CEO of Vanguard, Forever True. These forever people who sit around here. You know, amazing thing about journalism is that it takes 2-3 years they get rid of you. But these two hung around for so long and are still hanging around that there must be something about the work that they do. And we will talk a little bit more about. So this panel will engage in a very, very important conversation. Professionalism in service of. And I think an appropriate intro to that subject has been given us in the last week or two. One of the things that professionals do, that they are very critical to the building of institutions. If there's anything that I have managed to study in the last 40-something years, it's about institutions and economic performance. How institutions help societies make sustained progress. I'm fascinated by the fact that it's now very clear that the dominant paradigm in the study of development of human progress today is about institutions and their progress. Certainly with a lot of flair and panache, the British historian Neil Ferguson, in his many writings on civilization, 6 killer apps of Western power, of the West versus the rest, makes the point that it's finding the difference between societies is the strength of their institutions. Barack Obama, as President of the United States, visiting Africa for the very first time, in that powerful remark in Accra, Ghana, said that what Africa needs is strong institutions, not strong men. Africa continues to struggle with big men getting to power as strong men, and continues very sadly to flounder because Africa's institutions remain very weak. In the last week or two things have happened that many Nigerians kind of have not paid enough attention to, but are the kinds of things that lead societies to anarchy. One of them came from a governor who I normally have a lot of regard for. For whatever reason, a court decided that his defection had cost him a place as governor. Then he said some things that should never be said by anybody in public office. Never. You know, the key institutions of human progress. It might have a lot of things wrong with it. Not an elected official talking the way that David Umahi spoke about the judiciary. It's unacceptable. He must offer a public apology. In the last couple of weeks, I have attended a number of Nigerian Bar Association related events, including the Speedel event. And one of the remarks I made at the Speedel event just last week was about judicial activism, and showed how even in the realm of entrepreneurship, so much credit is given by economists and scholars of institutions to the role that Luis Brandeis in the US Supreme Court has played in a set of judgments that have come out of him. Only a society that does not understand the importance of institutions will allow that kind of thing to happen. The other one is the Senate itself. The Senate that decided that it was going to continue in spite of a court judgment because they have their role. That's not how to proceed. There is order. You can appeal that. You can make a law, since you are the lawmakers, that eventually you override that. But the Senate president should not have spoken the way he spoke. All these things are paths to anarchy. need to avoid this as we go forward. And so, somebody that I have utmost regard, the biggest influence on my work as an academic, a gentleman called Douglas North. Douglas North, in 1990, wrote a remarkable book, Institutions, Institutional Change, and Economic Performance. And the point that he makes is so important is that institutions evolve. It's not the degree that makes an institution. They evolve in such a way from practice. One of the reasons I was a great admirer of the late Chief Gadifa was that I loved the way he went to court. He litigated everything because those provided the basis for the emergence of boundaries to conduct. And those boundaries to conduct are really truly what institutions are. And Douglas' point is that professional bodies, business associations, and groups like that, in their engagement, ultimately help draw the boundaries that lead to the institutions that advance human progress. And so we must beg public officers in our country to stop acting in ways that take away from the evolution of stronger institutions, because these are the only things that can truly give us sustainable progress. I thought I should make that point about the subject of today, with all these fine professionals here to speak to what professionalism really means. That is an angle I would like to see us also focus on. But today's LWT is special in many ways. If you look out there and you see the brochures that go with all the LWTs, you'll see that we have been privileged to use the lives of some extraordinary men and women to show how young people structure the world. Whether we're talking about the Domola days, the Brother Williamses, the Atom Benefos, and can go through the list of many hundred of these people who over the years have been honored the LWT series. By the way, the LWT, Leader Without Title, Tribute to Colloquium series, is derived from the work of a Canadian called Robin Sharma, who wrote the book, The Leader Who Had No Title. And many times we are obsessed with titles, president, governor, yet one people who make the most impact in our world never hold those titles. One of my favorite name recognition tests. I'll mention the name of a country, mention the first name that comes to your, the person that comes to your head. In Singapore, that's actually first deep for you. India, Gandhi. I almost heard most of you saying Gandhi. The truth is, Gandhi was never a minister. Gandhi was never prime minister, or chairman of a party. Yet, when you think India, the first name that comes to you is of this leader of the social movement. And so we thought that we should have a series that celebrate people, not for the titles they held, but for the impact of their lives. This is what the LWT series has been about. We very rigorously find these people, celebrate them. But if it is a double accomplishment we'd like to go for, yes, to make them recognize that, to recognize the work of their life. I said earlier, more importantly, because the focus of CVL is in trying to make young people learn something from their life, to get young people to focus on the values that shaped the accomplishment of these people. And in a very, very peculiar way, my path directly crossed most of those that we have honored. Path not across the Lord, Dr. Akimabu, so on and so forth. But in the case of the two gentlemen who are not today, I had the good fortune of our paths crossing in some way. Now, a conversation we had 2001. Now the airport hotel, you were running for president of the Nigerian Bar Association. I ran into you there. And we had this conversation. And it has been my delight to not only track impact that you have made, not just on the bar, or but to even get to be associated with the firm in many ways, such that some of your own sons have become some of those that I love to mentor. And I'm truly delighted that we are able to honor you today. Dr. Patrick. For many reasons, a tribute to him for me is really trying to get Nigeria to recognize people who did not make noise with their movement, but leave a gale storm when they pass. The little part of the documentary that was shown talks about his impact, changing the course of Nigerian journalism. He's attracting back to Nigeria and from academia into journalism some of our finest minds. You know, democracy, one of my favorite definitions of democracy and modernity come from a German philosopher, contemporary philosopher, Jürgen Habermas. Habermas describes modernity, democracy as rational public conversation. Dr. Fideko elevated the platform of journalism as a forum for rational public conversation. And took this coming from life of service in the public service. He told the story of how he went to the cabinet office, the work that he did there, and then the journalism. Managing director, Daily Times, one of the pioneers that made the Guardian come alive. It just gives me extraordinary personal pleasure to have his life elevated young people to understand what it means. So I am tremendously pleased that this is happening. How did I get, or how did we get to this LWT and CVL and many things we do? Typically, we say a thing or two about this. Today, I want to put it in greater perspective. But I want to also make a farewell announcement of sorts today. I was a very rascally young youth corper reporter working for Chris Okoli at New Breed magazine, 1977, causing all kinds of trouble in the place. Actually wrote an editorial that led to not editorial, feature, led to a cabinet reshuffle in 1977. And another one that made Obasanjo back New Breed magazine. But I came back. I left graduate school in 1978. Came back. And my father passed in 1980. At the height of the Iranian Revolution and oil prices breaking all records. At that time it was $40. It was considered unimaginable. At the airport in New York at JFK, Time Magazine and Newsweek had exactly the same words, unprecedented, on their cover. The world over a barrel. But oil prices. When I came back to Nigeria, I saw it at play. There was a party on every street in Surulere. Streets were all blocked. People were going totally crazy. People were even having buckets of champagne for people to wash their hands in to show that they had happened. When I returned to the US, I wrote a pretty troubled piece about the Nigerian condition. I knew that if I returned, I would be drawn into a lot of, the real contestations about the Nigerian condition. So I quickly finished writing my PhD thesis in 1982. I got on the plane. I returned to Nigeria. Anyway, I say this because all these coincidences sometimes happen. Permit me for you're a Catholic, you went to church this morning, find that the readings go back to Esther and petition to the king, Mordecai. Strangely, on my flight, I said similar prayer. One of the things that I coming back to Nigeria in 1982, I'm going to be making comments about lots of things. One thing I hope I will not do will be that iconoclast or muckraker who just writes about what's wrong. Does nothing about it. And so I committed myself to making an effort, no matter how people do something about anything I critically from. It has given me 40 years of pure misery. Because I've tried to do many things just because I committed about it. And one of the things that I tried to do in my talking too much is problem of Nigeria's leadership. So what do we do about it? We founded this. The very first thing that hit me, by the way, following that small agreement I tried to make on the flight, I got in. Somebody I knew, successful business person, was dying of cancer. Turned to his wife and pleaded with her. He was sorry that he was going to give her like this. He said to her, look, my siblings are already struggling for my property while I'm still alive. But imagine what will happen when I die. Please don't fight them, or they will kill you and nobody will be there to raise our children. It was the kind of resigned impotence that I found particularly strange. He was dead a few weeks later, and his wife went from the bedroom mansion to sleep room there. I was so angered by the whole thing. I wrote a piece in the Concord. Early 1983, I think it was. The agony of the Nigerian widow. That set me off on a project that I've been at for more than 40 years. Because some of the videos that we were playing before you came. 2 days ago, here on International Women's Day, we had 100 and something of those videos. We run all kinds of programs for widows for more than 40 something years. So beginning from widows, organizing lawyers, friends of mine, pro bono lawyers for women who have been amazed at the things that happen in these things. A woman and her children are locked up. 1.5 years, they're still in prison in some rural part of this country, accused of killing their husband and father because relatives wanted the property. People like Bingo Yebodi, we met, trying to get them to offer pro bono services to some of these widows. Why am I giving some background of what led to where we are? Plus, like I said, I wanted also take advantage of to make a departure announcement. Again, responding to the Habermas idea of modernity and democracy. I thought, how can we increase public conversation. So 22 years ago, started a television series called Patito's Gang. The armor of the entire universe. I salute you. He told him, I will tell you who I told. I was trying to invite you. I will tell you who I told. I wanted to call you. Person said you were arrested. Okay, we thank God. So, so we gathered a number of us 22 years ago. What was the best studio in Nigeria? Probably LTV Lagos. We began this adventure of producing this television series. It was 90 minutes. It took a whole day to do what it was. And through all kinds of miracles, we kept our television. I want to announce today that in September, I will shut down the Colloqium. I thought it was a good time, a good place. In front of the Preofessionalism. This was part of the effort. And we have sustained it, blood, sweat, and all kinds of things. Because the culture in Nigeria, sadly, is not one that encourages rational public conversation. But 22 years is a wrong. I thought it was a good place and a good time. But I want to say that we should all be challenged to open the space. Unless we have rational public conversation, the kind of progress that we expect of our country will be more difficult. It is always easy to stay in our backyards, in our bedrooms, and complain about things. Let's do something. We'll find that the challenges will tell us. So 40 years ago, it's exactly 40 years this year that I returned from graduate school. And I said, just do something. But when Laja took back, I was vice president. The cabinet was going to have a retreat. He came to Lagos to talk to a group of public intellectuals, so to speak. I remember I said to him, it doesn't matter what you guys do, just do something. I want to take advantage of somebody who did something to encourage the next generation that Twitter does not solve any problem. Do what you tweet, and you might have a better country before you. I thank you. I want to particularly welcome Aremo Shegun Oshoba. I think was it you I was discussing him? I was discussing somebody just in the last 2-3 days. We were at a meeting together. Aremo, I bow. I tremble. And I apologize. In the many series that we have tried to run as part of this Just Doing Something, we have something we call the Nigeria History Series. You saw some clips of it running before we started, in which we had, I think you saw the parts on health. We took about 7 former ministers of health through more than 30-something years. What went wrong with health policy in Nigeria? Our kickoff person on that series Ozaremo. And I'm very, very glad that he is here. I was talking with somebody, I don't know who, just about the last 2-3 days. And the person said, oh, no, yes, I remember now. It was last week. It was the minister of Adebayo, Trade and Investment. And he said, you know, that you had all recovered, but you were taking things easy. So I thought, okay, I shouldn't trouble you. So, but I'm very, very happy to see you. I too took off. I've been out for some time myself. So welcome. So I think our next item in the way that we proceed around here is to go into the colloquium proper. And we've got this interesting panel. And I'd like to start with Mrs. Boma Labi and really to get a perspective from you on professionalism and public service. Many people argue that the trouble with Nigeria is that many of the people in public service of different kinds, you know, as a lawyer, you serve people. That's the, I guess when lawyers say amicus curiae, friend of the court, you're really in service. What has failed in our system that has diminished that sense of service in engaging the public? And how might we begin to heal this terrible wound, this sore, which in the Guardian, as we remember, it is open and only truth can heal. Yes, Boma.
Thank you very much, Professor Itomi. And may I just quickly join you in congratulating those that we are celebrating. My learned leader and Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Chief Oleloni Pekun, and of course, Dr. Patrick Cole as well. Very worthy of celebration, and I'm delighted to be here. Professionalism in public service, what has failed? Like you, I've been out of the country for a bit. I came back home and it was a fresh perspective. Sadly, not an improved one. In my time as a young person here, we were so much more engaged in what went on with our society. Even though we had a military dictatorship for most of my younger days, we still didn't give up on and just let them get on with whatever they were doing. And I found the apathy and the lack of engagement of the citizen very, very disturbing. You see, standards are subject to gravity. If we don't hold them up, they will fall. Human beings are not by nature just going to do the best and be professional. Professionalism is achieved by standard setting and then holding people accountable. Without that, it simply doesn't happen. I'll give you a recent example with one of my pro bono cases, which again is using my profession in public service. It was a medical negligence case involving a woman and a pregnancy, a ectopic pregnancy that was not detected. Now, what usually happens here is we will have someone come along and say, Emma Binu, don't be angry, forgive. We believe in God and all this business. That's all very well. We do believe in God, but standards must be upheld. And my response to that intervention was to quickly do a search and get some statistics. And I said, well, women in Norway, for instance, I chose a couple of Scandinavian countries in Europe. And these are the statistics. Let us say, for example, I don't have the statistics to hand, but 1 in 10,000 dies in this process of childbearing, which is a natural process. The Nigerian woman, it's perhaps 100 out of 1,000. Are you telling me that God loves Nigerian women less than he loves Scandinavian women? I don't think so. I think the difference lies in professionalism and upholding standards. And where we do not insist on consequences for not meeting those standards, that's what we get. So that was one of the things I picked up on, certainly in my working life, that we do not insist on holding people accountable for what they do, both in private and in public service. Number two is the public servants themselves. They've got to be properly rewarded in order for them to give their best. We have the example of what happened in Georgia. Georgia was one of the most corrupt countries when it emerged out of the Soviet Union. Civil servants were very poorly paid, bloated civil service, all of the things we have going on here. And they did a clean sweep, got rid of the excess fat, so to speak, ensured that people were well paid, and corruption reduced drastically. And they moved from near the bottom of the corruption index to near the top. And I think that is what we must do. I mean, when I look at the remuneration for civil servants, I wonder why they're in public service in the first place. And the only reason can be because for the majority of them is access to corrupt income. And this is why you have so many bottlenecks and red tape in dealing with any government agency. You find that if you do not have a relationship or you do not grease the palm, things generally do not move along as they should do. And so this is one of the things that we must address.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
We'll come back through to you again, but you know, you're just talking about the public service. There's a few people I know that can take that further and much deeper than the man sitting to my left. Dr. Joaba has seen this both from perspectives in Europe and inside the core. You know, when General Obasanjo was elected in 1999, and Dr. Cole and Co were around, I remember that I got a copy of the book on Servicom that had just come out of, and the workbook, and gave to Elijah Met Jordan. And that's how this whole Servicom thing entered the system. You have worked inside that in the UK, you've worked here. What makes it so difficult to get civil servants to be professional and to deliver and be accountable?
Thank you very much, Prof. Let me start by paying tribute to you, Prof, as the convener of this event and for all of the services you've done to our country over all of these years. I mentioned Prof's name to someone and he said, oh, Professor Tommy is your friend. I said, yeah, he's my senior friend, though. And he makes more effort in the friendship than I do. And the person said, oh, there are so many things I would want to be like with regards to Prof. And I said, well, there are so many things I don't want to be like. I don't want to be a professor, as an example. I don't want to have 40 years of misery like he's had. but I admire the patriotism, the love of country, the networking, the friends that he has. And, doing this sort of thing is another example of that, patriotism and the willingness to give to society. I'm deeply honored to be in the presence of the honorees. Chief Olani Peku, I'd like to tell you that I started life as a lawyer before I lost my way. I started dealing with reforming government when I realized that actually government is more powerful than the law, unfortunately. Dr. Cole, thank you for teaching me English. In our days, we read the Daily Times, we read the newspapers to learn how to spell properly, to learn how to construct sentences properly, and also to learn, critical thinking and analysis. And the media continues to have a role, which unfortunately is diminishing now, of actually shaping the conversation and shaping the argument. And now, unfortunately, it's all about sensation, and people are no longer doing critical analysis and thinking. So I'm really grateful to be in this company. Prof, with the background I've given, you forgive me for having been trained to always start with definitions. And so what is public service, and who is a public servant? So generally a public servant is anybody that is paid out of the public purse, and that includes the civil service. And then if you look at the word public servant itself, I was addressing a body of permanent secretaries a while ago, and I said a public servant is actually a servant of the public. And any servant, it doesn't matter which one, any servant has certain characteristics. They tend to wake up before their bosses. They tend to sleep only after their boss has slept. They never answer back, even when they are attacked and challenged. And they are generally poorly paid, generally. That is what any servant usually is. And so to get a public servant to start to think in that sense, that I'm actually a servant of the public, starts to dictate how you should behave when you engage with the public. Now, there is a particular characteristic that public servants have, which is the exercise of discretion. You see, many people don't realize what it is to actually have the privilege. And I emphasize that it is a privilege to exercise state power. When I was DG of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, people found different things that they valued in that position. But one thing my mother valued was that whenever I was interviewed and I said anything about what government is doing or planning to do or not going to do, the papers report it as the federal government says. And my mother says, my son is the federal government. Because when he says, they report it as the federal government says. And I remember when I was going to take up that position, I had to take a pay cut of 70% to take the role. Of course, by the time I was finishing, the Naira had crashed to record lows, and that pay cut had become 90%. But at the time I spoke to my mom about the position, I said to her, Mama, how am I going to survive? What am I going to live on? There's no money in the thing. And she said, oh, don't worry about that. The money will come after you finish serving, not while you're serving. So the question you asked, Prof, about why is it so difficult for civil servants to be professional? First of all, I think it's an unfair question, because it assumes that civil servants are not professional, which is not necessarily the case. But what tends to happen is this. Most people do not see the public service as a profession. Most people that work in the public service, if you ask them, they'll tell you, I'm an engineer, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, whatever it is. It is only on the second order inquiry that they will tell you, I'm a director in the civil service or whatever. So many people don't see it as a profession of its own that has its own rules and ethics and ways of behaving. And because of that, it's difficult to actually judge what you mean by professionalism. Because a lawyer who is in the Ministry of Justice, what is his profession? Is he a lawyer or is he a civil servant? Which standards are you judging him by? A doctor who is in the Ministry of Health or in a public hospital, which standard are you judging the person by? Because with the professions, at least you are admitted based on character and learning. In the public service, we don't tend to think about things in that way, that your character is also an integral part of what you do. So let me just stop there by saying that one of the biggest things, like I said, is the exercise of discretion. There's no public service rule, there is no law, there is nothing that is written that is not subject to some discretion, particularly in the public service. The question then is, how do you exercise that discretion? Do you exercise that discretion by favoring a particular ethnic group? Do you exercise it for money? Do you exercise it sometimes just out of wickedness, just refusing to? Yeah, but it happens. People do that. They do it just out of sheer wickedness. You know, and then you go and address a group of recent retirees and train them, and they tell you how evil the civil servants in post are. And I said, but just last year, you were similarly evil to the people that went before you. So, but I'll conclude by saying that it comes back to the reason why you've set up this center. It is the quality of leadership. The civil service, the public service is only as good as the people that lead them. The role of the public servants, the role of the civil servants is to advise, help to shape policy, and document that advice. If the leader chooses to do things that are inimical to progress, I think it is unfair to blame it on the public servant. So I know we overflog the issue of leadership in Nigeria and say, okay, everything rests on leadership. But that is a particular case in which the public service, the civil service is only as good as the leaders want it to be. The day the leaders want it to be better, it will be better. The day they want it to be more professional, it will become more professional. Until they do so, like I said, I think it is an abuse to constantly ridicule civil servants and public servants as corrupt, as useless, as this, and as it just demotivates everybody. And because they're not allowed to answer back, this is actually verbal abuse. And I found that working in the system, knowing that we all went to the same universities, we all read the same books. All of these guys are doing wonderful things in their communities. Why is it that whenever they walk into the secretariat on a Monday morning, NEPA takes light in their head? Thank you.
Thank you so very much. The law has, I guess, a very important role to play in all of this. Behave and all. I mean, many years ago, I read a little book written by Elizabeth, public intellectual, if you want to put it that way, in France, who died in 1850. His name is Frederick Bastiat, and the book is titled The Law. And Bastiat basically makes the point that the nature of man is the pursuit of gain without pain. And that when man corners power, he then enacts laws that enable him to continue to do that. Are there fundamental problems with the law that makes it difficult to get public servants to professionally act in the interest of advance of the common good of all? Dr. Jomo. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So I want to, first of all, I want to start by congratulating our honorees, Chief Wole Olanipekun SAN and Mr. Deliko. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you very much for the sort of invitation. So I'll speak not just from the perspective of a lawyer, because I'm a public servant. I'm a lecturer in the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. So I'll speak from the perspective of public service. And as a researcher, I like typologies, right? So if we're thinking about something, what can we call it? What can we name it? And what does that mean? So I wanted to speak today about professionalism in two ways. So first of all, talk about soft professionalism and then about contextual professionalism. So soft professionalism in the sense of what exactly we think about when we speak about leadership, when we speak about service, when we speak about being a professional. Our public spaces, our corporate spaces have been constructed in a way that leadership is very forceful. And so we value the external features of professionalism. So somebody has a good degree, or they've accomplished so much in their profession, and then we leave aside what people now speak to as soft skills. And a lot of those things, we don't even think about them in the true manner of their softness. And I find that in professionalism in general, we actually try to undermine those things. We try to undermine things like kindness. We try to undermine the place of emotion in driving us to act the way that we do. And those are very fundamental things that determine the ways that we act, and the ways that we approach our jobs, the ways that we think about being professional, and professionalism in general. And there are things that if we speak to and if we prioritize, might help us start to think differently about what a professional looks like. So a professional isn't somebody who accomplishes so much or has so much, but is somebody who can actually give so much on a human level. And I see that every day in my job, mostly with the women that I work with, who find themselves being in a position to mother, to mother students, to mother colleagues, but those aren't time in public is really developing these soft, more human, more emotional aspects of our presence, even in the workplace. And then the second one about contextual professionalism, and I'm just going to agree with Dr. Abba on this, when we think about context. So a few years ago, I was an adjunct professor at a liberal arts college, an elite liberal arts college in New York. And I had a class of about 24 students. And I remember saying to someone, I have 24 students in my class, and they're like, oh, wow, that's a large class, and you have exams, and you are expected by the next week to have the results ready. In UNILAG, a small class for me would be 75 to 100 students. And I'm not teaching one class. I have classes with between 350 and 400 students. And at the end of the semester, somebody comes and says, let's have the results ready in 2 weeks, because that's what happens in New York, right? You have the exams ready, the results ready a couple of weeks after the exams, And my response to that has always been, even if I were rich, will I use my witchcraft to mark exams? So let's think about the context, about the enabling environment, or in this instance, the disabling environment of public service, and the ways in which we can be encouraged to overcome the challenges that we face in those environments to be able to deliver on our jobs. And sometimes there's difficulty in delivering on the hard aspects of the job. And many of us are also burdened by the soft aspects, and they may seem easier, because emotional energy is not something that you can quantify as such. That's kind of, so those are the two things. So just this idea of a soft professionalism that we basically undermine and we don't think very much of when we think about who is a professional, and contextual professionalism. So when we're thinking about values, when we're thinking about expectations, then we need to think about the context in which context under which people actually perform their service. With regard to the law and public service, if there's one thing I can say about Nigeria and many African countries for that matter, we do have very impressive legal and institutional frameworks for just about everything. But again, the problem is the context, and if you basically have great laws for the wrong context, then it's not going to work. So we need to begin to rethink the rules that govern our public service. And it's not just about the salaries that we paid, just in general, it's about the working conditions and the expectations, So once we begin to rethink that, then that will begin to define new rules that are more fit for context.
Well, thank you very much. Eluem, I think you have heard that what to do is to mother the place. We need nurturing. And the media has refused to nurture us, I think. Well, or does it nurture us? The big challenge today, particularly, is that the gatekeeping function of the media sort of being lost in the face of everybody's a journalist through social media. We could set the context in the past, the famous agenda setting function of the media. If the media has no influence at all, the fact that it can set society's agenda was enormous power. But today, a girl with a smartphone in a position to shape that agenda perhaps more than the gatekeeper at the Guardian. So does this mean that social media has nullified all the work that Dr. Patrick Dele-Cole did in trying to bring intellect into the newsroom? How do we go from there?
Thank you very much, Pat. And it's a privilege to be speaking at an event where people like Chief Olanipeku and my boss, Dr. Patrick Dele-Cole, are being recognized and celebrated, because it is appropriate to do that. Does it mean that the social media has killed journalism? It's essentially what you're asking. No, because there is room in journalism for social media. What has happened is that many people just don't understand how to use the social media for the work that we have to do them better. I think the problem really, and it's been scattered on Dr. Alba, even Professor Jomo, there isn't a standard. I don't know who in this room, seriously speaking, can tell you the rules for procuring something as basic as driver's license in Nigeria. If anybody knows the rule, and you have to know somebody in Federal Road Safety Commission. And once you know him, he will say, give us 25,000 naira. Nobody here knows exactly how much a Nigerian driver's license costs. But where is the rule for procuring Nigeria's driver's license? That I finished doing Guardian, Pat said we're there almost forever, and Dr. Cole knew that I was living and where I was going to. So I headed to Harvard. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to clear my head of this journalism, and maybe I will begin to think better. And the first thing I had to do was, because you have to move around in that place, I had to go rent a car. The car hire company says your driver's license from Nigeria is not recognized there. You have to get a driver's license from America. So I said, what do I do? They said there is a driver's license office out there here in Cambridge. And I went there, had all the documents. And then I was expecting somebody who would just collect the thing, ask for a little tip, and ask me to come back tomorrow, just the way we do it here. It didn't happen. So they said, first and foremost, whether you have been driving all your life or not, you're going to do tests in this state. I said, no, I've been driving since 1982. He said, you still have to be tested and you must pass the test before you can drive here. So I said, okay. And they said, you can't just walk in here and say, test us. You have to go to a driving school and register. Now, I have to factor all of this into the work that I was doing in the school. And then, so I went to a driving school. And the driving school owner must come with you on the day of the test and sit behind the car as a witness. Now, these are things that made Americans unhappy about the procuring driver's license. But for me, it was the best thing that happened to me. But right there in that office, I go to that computer, open it, put your name, I put my name, all my history in America was there. Say, print it out. The day I arrived, where I'm living, what I'm doing, when I'm going, printed it out, bring it here. So they didn't ask me for any document, I just printed it and gave it to them. They had it already. And then, look, go to that place, check your eyes. I checked, saw green inside it, not red. Say your eyes are okay. Go and pay right there, and you must pay by card. And so I just opened the system in their office and made a payment. Okay, now choose a date for the test. I chose a date and went back. The long and short of the story is that the day came, I came for the test, I did it. The Americans, like human beings, everywhere else on earth, don't like going through this process. But the process that build institutions and build nations are those. There has to be certain predictability in what we do. The problem with Nigeria, whether in journalism or in law or in everything else, is that if there is anything you can predict, is the unpredictability of the situation. That this thing is going to just be unpredictable. What did a test? Driver's license, go, you passed. Driver's license is going to be sent to you at home. 4 days later, exactly the day they sent, I opened the mailbox by the door and the driver's license was there. The same thing with social security number, which is very critical if you're going to work in America and do some things. Now, why I'm saying this is what has really gone wrong with Nigeria. It's because they have failed either to uphold the systems and that existed or in certain systems themselves. Many of our leaders tear down the systems, and so there is no system, and we operate a system of non-system. In journalism, it's exactly the same thing. Rather than looking at what has gone wrong with our profession, people are blaming everyone else. What has gone wrong is that the business sector, the official sector, the professional sector, everyone else has somehow managed to find a way of managing the media. And the media had never been able to find a way of managing itself. You can't set agenda. When you have people, before you wake up, they already determine what we're going to give you, and you will go that way. And they give it to you, and you come and respond in a certain way. You don't understand that people are taught to manage you. The media failing to set agenda, no agenda. Actually, pardon a bit of a digression. One of the worst things that has happened to us in recent years, and let me be very serious, especially in the last 6-7 years, is that every center of resistance, every center of expression in this country has been emasculated, not by force of arms. The labor union is dead. Student union is dead. The media is dead. Even women groups, before you say women are going to protest, some people will go and hijack it and they will be the ones protesting. They just emasculated every outlet by which Nigeria functioned, even as badly as it was in the past. So looking back now, you say that 8 years ago was better than now. I hope we don't come back 8 years later to say that now is better than then, because it can actually happen. But the point, therefore, is that having been emasculated, the media just lost its way. Why did magazines die? Why? Why did magazines die? They used to be, look, magazines were printed in hundreds of thousands every week in this country, and not one, not two, not three. And people went, even when the military was driving them off the road, people went inside of those magazines. They will reprint during the week. Why did they die? Magazines didn't die because anybody came and locked journalists up. They died because journalists just didn't see the opportunity in the new era. Journalists that operated as a very adversarial, from a very adversarial position in the past, suddenly didn't realize how to operate without being so adversarial. And the moment we missed our way, the magazines are, and that's why the newspapers are in bad shape today. Newspapers are still struggling to find their role, and they blame it on social media, blame it on everybody. Social media is here to stay. So what do you need to do with it to operate? I think the media, which is critical to the development of any society, will have to reinvent itself in this era. And we need encouragement from the leaders. This is the president, my president, former president, and I used to call him rascally president. But my Oga, the original president, is there sitting, so I can't call him rascally president very much, because he might tell him that I was talking to him and not him. This boy is very smart. But the Aremo knows that journalism today was not journalism 20, 30, even 40 years ago. We didn't have the resources now. The resources now are enormous, but the journalists are worse. They're better educated, better trained, really younger, and good institutions, more structured, more infrastructure. But journalism is second rate, just like in every other area in our country. So I think both the media and other segments of society must begin to think of how to reinvent ourselves. If there will be the renewal that we're looking for here, we cannot continue the way we're going, because things are not going to, we're not going to have better, different results. It will actually be worse results.
Okay, thank you so very much. Finger, let me come to you. Part of what Anaka has been saying, so a big challenge that we have for the society. I mean, it's full of problems, and we can't seem to even channel its energies in a particular direction. We often expect a powerful media. I mean, Aremo Oshoba is here. I mean, look at different times of challenges in our countries like 30, 40 years ago. And we had centers, dispersed centers from which ideas came and challenged the system. Aremo went to Ilorin, and suddenly the Herald was a national newspaper. Reku and Co in Calabar with the Chronicle and all of that. It became a power center. Today, everything seems to come only from Lagos. Maybe some Abuja fledgling media. Concentration. And people talk about restructuring all the time. How do we restructure thought? That's the first thing that needs to be structured. So when we talk about restructuring, for example, I like to say that the first restructuring of the Nigerian person, if we don't restructure Nigerians and they take on new character, new values, you can decentralize power all you like to still have the same problem. So how is concentration and centralization in media harming the ability of our country to focus and go in direction to travel?
Thank you, Prof. Before my...
Sorry, just as you are starting, let me just confirm. Is Clement Nwankwo online? Is Clement Nwankwo online? Okay, please check. And then, by the way, Olumide Akpata, the NBA president, is supposed to come in with some words. Is he coming out of in and out of meetings? But let me know when he's on so I can take his tribute before he returns to the meeting. All right, please continue.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Before my brief projection on this subject matter of centralization, the media, and our society, let me join everyone here in paying my compliments in regards to the honorees today. Chief Oladipo, I'm not a lawyer, but you know him from afar as intervention in our society. And of course, you know of Dr. Patrick Bele, who wasn't originally scheduled to be part of this meeting. When he spoke with me about 9:30 last night, and he said, it's being honored. So whatever was being done had to be shifted so that I would be here. To do that, honor. Having said that, it's always touching when you talk about media performance here, whether centralization, whether liberalization, because the counter to your postulation about over-centralization is that in actual fact, we have less effect, if not over-liberalization, because anybody with 100 naira and access to a mobile phone, buy data, he not just calls himself a journalist, he inflicts maximum damage to what they call journalism, as we know it, and of course to the larger society. They stay on their handhelds and conjure stories and spread them on social media. And the state actually uses that to judge the media, which is very frightening. Because when you look at all the proposed interventions by the state in the last 7 years in particular, all attempts to regulate the media have been based on judgment of the performance of the media from the perspective of what the social media is doing. And unfortunately, the people on the social media who are damaging the mass media, who are damaging society, are not journalists. Nigeria is over-centralized, and that's an historical fact because of those terrible years of military rule. The military in government runs a command government. As far as they are concerned, the entire country was one huge barrack. So you have no right to dissension, you have no right to debate, they just tolerate you. Now we are in a democracy and supposed to be more freedom, more openness. But unfortunately for us, even in the last 20 years, we are still yet to get out of that straitjacket. And you take that also from the kind of leadership that we've had since 1999. We've been lucky to have interregnum of governance by a few less prepared civilians. The first one was by a general, it was an emperor really, Obasanjo. And I don't know what was the difference between his regime of 1999 to 2007 and that of 1976 and 79. He saw everybody else that must be whipped into line. And the current one we have fixated, ossified no debate, no argument, nothing. How does you try, as far as I'm concerned, to this regime, to the leadership, it is still one huge barrack. So when you speak about freedom, about liberalization, you're actually provoking them. And what they think about is how to flog you. So for the media, it can only be freer. I think the media here is free, or yes, comparatively. When you talk about centralization, yes, there is centralization by practice because of what Mr. Isaiah has spoken to. What we have generally is herd mentality, or herd journalism, where even in the traditional media, you get somebody who will be the source of a particular story, has done the story.
Winger, just think of this.
Yeah.
On that, when they were really, really terrible.
Yes.
We had thriving newspapers like the Tide in Port Harcourt, the Standard in Plateau. I mean, you can go on and on. Those, but suddenly in this democracy where ideas are supposed to be flourishing everywhere, you can't find the newspapers anymore.
Under the military, you are the common enemy.
Okay.
Right now, the enemies own the media. that really is the problem. You can do a count. Once you take out the Punch, the Vanguard, the Guardian, what is left?
The enemy.
The others are owned by the people you are actually out. You should be out chastising, setting agenda for, doing them. Well, according to their leader, they should be in jail. But that is the truth. So under the military, you had a common enemy who thought we are all robots. And so even when they are paying your salary, you could resist. Chief of Shoba here with Peter Ajayi, they resisted their owner in Ilorin, even though they were being paid by the military, because of the environment and also because of the acceptance of what role the media should be to push us towards more freedom, to push us towards democracy. But it's not the same now. Every bagger now sets up a newspaper. Now, even if those of them in government, I hope it is not a rumor, they actually set up media centers where they buy dozens of computers, they hire boys just to take on everybody and shape the public perspectives. That is the problem we are having. And those are the people, unfortunately, that are referred to as journalists and are so treated. And so when Lai Mohammeds of this world come and say, I want an anti-social media, or anti-social law media, or I want this and that, is actually talking about these characters that they have empowered and using them to judge all of us. Because the rules are clear. If you work in the traditional media of old, of Dr. Dele Kola, Chief Shegun Oshoba, you don't bring a story that you have not checked. You follow the 4 principles of the road free. Is it fair? Is it true? Will it serve the public good? You don't do that, your editor will drive you to hell. It's not the same anymore. Because the people, all that are going to read in tomorrow's paper are probably being blended and doctored and treated on Facebook and Snapchat. And then finally, for the editors in the newsroom struggling to now sift which one is true from which one is false. And that is what gets into the public domain. So I don't agree that the state really over centralizing the media. I think on the contrary, we have almost a laissez-faire, which is almost dangerous because some of the main actors now don't know of any rules. They don't believe in any. They don't believe in fairness, and they are agents of the enemy who are the owners. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll take one round of just quick, this time, one minute kind of responses as we move on. And I want to come back to Joe here. You know, we have had a long tradition of dirigism. The dirigists, you know, government control, state, and all of that. We have a public service that's grown in state control and really sees the private sector as a nuisance. these people who should be controlled. I like, Emeka brought up a Cambridge Mass story. And my own famous one, of course, is going on sabbatical to the Harvard Business School in 1996 and renting a small house in Cambridge on Elm Street. And wanting to get a telephone. And so I went to the telephone booth around the corner to get the address of the phone of the company, so I could go there to go and process my phone. So they asked me, why are you calling? Why do you want to come to the office? So because I want a telephone, I've just moved in. I said, you don't need to come to the office to get a telephone. I said, what's wrong with these people now? There's a phone connection in the house, right? I said, yes. He said, have you ever lived in the United States? Have you ever owned a phone in the US? I said, of course, I went to school here. Yeah, okay. Just give us your name. We will check from those records. If you had no problem, pick up the phone at 6 p.m. There will be a ringtone. I said, these people have come again. That was the time when they said we could not own phones in Nigeria because it's not for the poor. So I waited. 6 p.m. I quickly rushed, picked up the phone. There was ringtone. They gave me my phone number. In the village in some parts of eastern Nigeria, they said, "Chai, because they don't chop, chop wizard." Give me my phone number. I could start using the phone. Now, the poor in Nigeria, they were trying to be protected by this behemoth Leviathan from being cheated. But it cost me less to call than for my wife to call me. Meanwhile, they said, choose your own long distance preference. So I chose a long distance company. First thing I did as soon as I got the dial tone, I called. And they answered. I said, please, I will call and don't call so that we can manage the money. It's cheaper from here. And I was calling. I would call every day to find out, are they back from school? Have they gone to school? End of 1 month, I paid my bills. Bill came second month, I paid it again. Then one morning, I was coming in from early church. The phone was ringing. I thought maybe something happened. They're calling me from Nigeria. Grab the phone. Yes. Say, this is Sprint. That was a telephone company, long distance company I chose. I said, yes. I said, oh, we noticed that you are making frequent calls. I said, these people have come. Because I'm Nigerian, they think I'm 419. All these phone calls. I said, yes. Is there any problem? Did I pay my bill? I said, no. We have just realized that you are a very good customer. You make all these calls. And so we are reducing your rate by 50%. I said, please, madam, you see, this is September. Christmas is still far away. Why are you doing Christmas in September for me? He says, no, because you're such a good customer. In fact, those first 2 months, telephone that you paid, we're giving it to you as welcome. So you won't pay until those about 1,000 something a month that have passed with half of my distance. So I looked at myself in the mirror and decided, you can't be more stupid in life, The title of the book I came there to write is Competition and Strategy in Emerging Economies. And I saw competition and I did not understand it. Because all they were doing is recognizing that if another phone company finds out there's somebody making as many calls, they will offer a better rate. So they were quick to offer me a better rate. How are we going to educate the public servant to understand the power of markets? And an area that I'm really fascinated, I keep trying to throw it at the public service whenever I can get a chance. I run retreats for them. Japan Incorporated, MITI, Emerging Japan, Ministry of International Trade and Industry. You will see the seamless between the private sector, the public sector, because what matters is Japan's interest. There isn't the kind of competition between public sector and private sector that we see in the public service in Nigeria? What is it about how public servants see markets and how we can advance it? I mean, for me, one of the areas is biggest is all this talk about infrastructure. You know, government, infrastructure. We need, and they turn to the budget. Can this budget ever provide any infrastructure? Whereas markets, as we know, this famous prosperity paradox, will generate infrastructure. How can we re-educate the public service to see markets and the private sector as the true source of growth for the country?
Thank you, Prof. Chief Olanipekun, you know, I mentioned that I don't want to be a professor because what they do is they ask you a deeply intellectual question and give you 1 minute to answer it. What it is, you need to start with the ground norm. That's why I said to very many people's chagrin that our constitution is fundamentally flawed. And the fundamentalism of the flaws it has cannot be amended by subsequent amendments because we, the people, did not give ourselves our constitution. We didn't. So the constitution sets the rules of the game. And the constitution sets the size of the state. It sets the approach of the state. It sets the roles of production. The Constitution talks about, it assumes infinite resources where the only issue should be how it is shared. That's what our current Constitution assumes. It never assumes that there will ever be a Nigeria that doesn't have money. So it's only about how do you share the money in a fair and equitable way. So because it is not focused on production, it then becomes again unfair to pick on the public service. Because I bet you, Prof, that MTN or Airtel or whichever phone company you use has never called you to say, Prof, you've been a good customer, we're going to reduce the amount you pay to us. The airlines, which are private sector, treat us worse than the civil servants treat us. They do. You have to get to the airport at least an hour before your flight, otherwise they won't carry you, and you'll have to pay for no-show. They'll keep you there at the time of the flight. 2 hours later, no single announcement. When they make the announcement, they will say, delayed for operational reasons. And I say, what is operational reasons? I've been here for 4 hours. Surely I deserve a better explanation. Is your aircraft faulty? Tell me so that I can go and book another one. You can't just tell me operational reasons and expect me to accept that. If you go to the passport office or the driver's license office and they tell you your driver's license is not ready for operational reasons, would you accept that? So we've built a culture of underperformance. We've built a system where things are designed not to work. And for you to start to address that, you need to go back to the rules of the game, which is what institutions are about. How do you set the rules of the game? If you set the rules of the game such that the public service will not function, it will not. If you set the rules of the game such that it will, it will. The vice president recently addressing a group of civil servants, that's why I agree with the Leonard Silk that joined us online. The vice president said, we pretend to pay you guys and you guys pretend to work for us. But that is the system that exists. How do I, as a director, I need to have spent 27 years of service to become a director. My salary is 300,000 naira. Take home. For everybody in my village, I'm a director in the federal civil service. and you don't expect me to do runs? How? There is the argument, yes, that everybody takes a job knowing how much that job pays. You can make that argument, fine. But there was a time that people used to, have little perks here and there. I know very many retired permanent secretaries that built their houses from, going for courses and travel, and all of that has stopped now. So you get somebody who is a starter in Shell or Mobil earning more than a permanent secretary. And what do you expect? You expect these people to be angels that fall from heaven? And people say, oh, our public service is bloated. Our public service is actually not bloated. Our federal civil service is 92,000 people. The entire public service of Nigeria is 5 million people. The UK, 60 million people, is 5.7 million. But what you have is a system where somebody comes in with his consultants from the private sector. They come in with their laptop. They ignore the public service for 4 years because they are thinking, oh, I just need to do this thing quickly and go. And these guys are going to slow me down. And, that's what happens. So you perpetuate a system where for decades, people don't do anything. And and because the main motive of the private sector is profit, the main motive of the public service is not profit, it's service. And so the private sector will be a lot more aggressive. They will be a lot more focused on learning new ways and new technologies to make money. But the public service, on the other hand, is not measurable by profit unless you set the rules of the game such that production becomes the purpose of public service. That's why if you go to a public servant in the UK, go to a public servant in the US, their role is to lead to economic growth. That is their role. And they lead to economic growth through the way they regulate. They don't regulate saying no to everything and stopping you from growth and from working. They don't regulate by setting obstacles in every single road. They don't regulate through multiple taxation. They don't do any of that. Their role is to ensure that as public servants, the licensing and regulating system encourages growth. Ours is exactly the other way around. And it is exactly the other way around because, like I said, our ground norm is not based on production, it's based on sharing what we believe we already have. The civil servant, Prof, is to be directed. If you want me to be useless, I'll be useless for you very well. But if you want me to function, I will function for you very well because I know that the politician is the one with the power to hire and fire. And that's why I keep going back to what I said. The public service will only be as good or as bad as the politicians want it to be, or as the leaders want it to be. Finally, Prof, let me just tell you the trajectory of how we got to where we are today so that you know it didn't start today. The Udoji Review of 1974 introduced things that people are making money for claiming to be consultants these days. Management by objectives, performance-based budget, all of those things were in the Udoji report. What did the leaders do? They took the pay rise, awarded pay rise, and forgot everything else. Then Maurice Allah came after Gowon, purged 10,000 in one day, announced their sack over the phone, gutted out the service. Gutted out the service. Then Babangida came, and it became fashionable not to be honorable. That was the, so you can dribble anybody, you can tell any lie, you can do anything. That became the norm, that became the rule of the game. And then Abacha came, and then it was, these guys are just a nuisance, because if you are a dictator, if you are a dictator, the role of the public service normally is to put in checks and balances to make sure that you don't abuse power. No dictator would like that. And then the democratic dispensation came, and it became, these guys are just a nuisance to be tolerated. Just pay them the salary. And that's why every single state governor, the first thing he will tell you is, I need to pay salaries. Because of course, the civil servants are blessed with the skills of petition writing. And public money is impossible to steal alone. You must go through a process. So if you are a DG or a minister or anything, any letter that gets to your hand has been copied 10 times before you see it. Anyone that leaves your hand has been copied 10 times before it gets to where it's going. So we are now in a situation where there is a bargaining culture, right? There's a bargaining culture. Leave me to do my own little corruption because you're also doing your own big one, and I'm not talking. That's where we are today, Prof. So just change the rules of the game, and the game will change. Thanks for allowing me more than 1 minute.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much. Incidentally, I hope Mrs. Alabi is still there. I'm coming to her next. I actually saw last Sunday in Abuja, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, a priest whose first homily I had the privilege of listening to back in the 80s. And he titled his homily, The Gidability Factor. He said, all of you are talking about Bangida, but many of you are little Gidas. He may be the Babangida, but you are all little Gidas. So whenever I see him, I remember that his first homily as a priest from the 80s. So, Dr. Jomo, the Gidability factor in Nigeria. Sorry, not Dr. Mr. Labi, is she there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
The Gidability factor basically sees a country challenged by not having role models, really, because most of those that are out there to emulate seem to be the Baba of the Gidability factor. And so the little Gidas tend to just flow down that river. What kinds of things can we begin to do? I mean, above and beyond this kind of event, to get a generation that seems lost to find a new course, because this is the challenge for our country. How do we get young people to see that we can actually reap a demographic dividend from our youth bulge, rather than all these young people trying to do all these strange things, totally focused on self, this and narcissism that seems to be consuming us, and society is running amok, more or less.
Well, it's a difficult one because I'm engaged on different levels. You're engaged as a parent with the school system, and you see how other parents parent, and you lose hope for that child. The example that the parents show in the way they engage with the teachers, the way they cheat for their children. What hope does that child have? And I'll give you a live example. My daughter is now at a school near LBS. She didn't do very well with her math test, and so she had to do a second test. And a number of children were in the same quandary. I think there were about 12 or 13 of them. They were doing this by virtual means, and one of the parents was cheating for the child. The teacher caught the parent, and that child was disqualified. Now, what hope does that child have when this is ingrained from home? you look at the way we drive in Lagos. You know, it's a typical example of what has become the Nigerian character. You're driving, there's an access road, and any other place you would allow that individual to carry on because your lane is on a stop. No, we would block the other person and ignore the fact that we could have let them go past. Same thing with what we call shunting and queuing and so on. So it's ingrained. There are far too few of us who still try to uphold these standards. But I say, you know, it takes one after the other, one pull up one. So I'm not giving up hope. I've painted a picture. It is a realistic picture. What I personally do is I intervene, I speak up every time. I'm sometimes seen as the crazy woman. In fact, I've been called crazy woman a few times, not a problem. But you will do the right thing so long as I'm present and observing what is going on.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will call you out. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then these sort of platforms, what you're doing, you have no idea the incredible reach it does have, because those who have participated will take it on to others who have not participated and so on. So those are some of the things we can do. The other thing is if you have access to your representatives, the National Assembly, for example, the so-called honorable and distinguished, there are those that have called to their face dishonorable and undistinguished. And if you want me to tell you why, I will tell you so. So you have to speak up in every sphere of influence that you have, and you have to.
Got to be about Sorosuke.
Yeah, absolutely. And then lead by example.
Yeah, but well, thank you. Well, let me stay with that line because really, truly, we've got a real problem of institutions and boundaries. Again, little story to illustrate. I was traveling one Easter Sunday 11 years ago, and at the airport was total madness. There were like 9-10 governors traveling that night. And the entire airport was commotion, upside down. Professor Shoyinka was traveling somewhere, so I stopped to chat with him in front of the British Airways lounge, and then all these governors suddenly descended. And I thought, this is, anyway, chaos went on until we got into these aeroplanes. And on my own flight, there were like 7 of the governors, plus the then governor of the central bank, Lamido Sanusi, the foreign minister at the time, the late Ashiru, who was sitting right next, across from me. And then we landed in London. And then all those men carried their bags. They were walking like human beings. In Lagos, 6 people held their telephones, held their bags, held their legs. So as we entered the elevator, I just started laughing. And Amechi, Chibika Amechi, who was governor of Rivers at the time, turned to me and said, okay, Prof, tell us, you want to say something? I said, how come you are all behaving like human beings here? What's different from here in Lagos? I say, only you say things like that. You see, what can we do to normalize power, to humble authority in this country? Because as it's said in the theories of journalism, there's a status conferral function of the media. They are the ones who are seen. If all these people behave irresponsibly, why do we expect the rest of society to behave properly? Ordinarily, in decent places, the most humble person should be the public servant. That governor is the one you shouldn't even see. If you are an American cabinet minister, you are likely to end up on road 28 in between 2 fat women, because that's how you know what's going on. I mean, Lyndon Johnson said head transport secretary came to work in a chauffeured car. I said, hey, Mr. Secretary, how do you know how the transportation system works? Now we don't see governors on commercial flights. In states where people can't eat one meal a day, they are flying in chartered airplanes back and forth. How do we civilize power in Nigeria?
Thank you. So I'm going to try to stick to 1 minute, but I'm going to go back to the two things that I talked about, soft professionalism and contextual professionalism. What do we celebrate? You know, what exactly do we think of when we think about power? What do we think about, what do we think of when we think about leadership? You know, so the things that we celebrate are the things that people run after. So we celebrate wealth, financial wealth. We celebrate certain kinds of accomplishments. And so that's what people will pursue. But there are other, I mean, this is leadership without title, right? There's so many leaders across this country. And like Dr. Abba said, people who, I mean, they're civil servants, yes, you see this person is a director, but that's really not where their power or their leadership is shown. And there are people who are delivering very selfless acts of service every day in this country, but that's not what we recognize. And that's not what we appreciate as a people. So until we begin to think about these soft aspects, the human aspects of professionalism, of leadership, of power, and celebrate those, then perhaps we'll start to change the way we approach our leaders.
So perhaps the media is responsible for it.
It's not just the media.
Yeah.
I think it's a cultural thing, and it grows. I mean,
a KBC function. Sorry, as a KBC, yes. So
I think it's something that I think we all need to be, you know, we all need to like be conscious of. And obviously, the media has a role to play in terms of just celebrating certain kinds of service and certain kinds of people that we ordinarily wouldn't, right? But I think just we generally as a people, starting one person at a time, like what are the things that you value, you know? And we generally, and it's not just a Nigerian thing, I think just generally, public heroism is usually about, you know, very visible, very forceful kinds of accomplishments. In the midst of poverty, then it gets worse, right? And then the second thing is just this contextual thing, right? So I'm from Benin, and I really love to kneel when I greet. But I don't know why that's a problem for some people. You know, it's like, you are at the airport in London. How you just be kneeling down in public, you know? So, I mean, we need to also think about our context and some of the things that matter as, you know, these are things that are part of our culture that we really don't want to, we don't want to look exactly like London or exactly like Sweden, right? So let's not throw everything out and think, oh, the fact that this person is surrounded by 5 people. So again, this isn't saying that public servants should have like 10, you know, have an entourage of 10 people. But I also think that there are certain things that are contextual to here that we have bigger problems, you know, than trying to deal with that, right? So the softness and the contextualism, I think we should really focus on.
Okay. But how can the media help, how can the media help direct the values of our country, you know, so that, you know, we have, I mean, values shape human progress. That's a mantra of mine. I mean, one of the greatest minds that I've ever known, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, you know, really made a mantra of that: values shape human progress. Provoked a colloquium at Harvard while I was around there, why values shape human progress, in the book Culture Matters. What can the media do to begin to focus on values? Is it so unfashionable? Is it why can't we focus on values?
Well, I don't think the media alone can do it, but the media can focus on values, definitely. I think that you can report with values at the back of your mind. What are you, Professor Jomo just talked about, what are we celebrating in the society? That we celebrate those things that really don't matter. If you take an opinion poll of every segment of the society, all of them will tell you great things that they believe in. They will extol all the wonderful values, put them to practice, and none of them will be done. That's where the problem is. So the media can, obviously, keep trumping those issues that are that promote good value in the society. But it's going to take more than the media. It is going to take more than just publishing stories and encouraging conversation, which is what you're doing here now. And you are really, in a sense, you are an advocate in the media. The media space is what you're occupying right this moment. You are even talking of Patito's gang going to sleep, even though I think that you shouldn't rest it for now, or maybe you rest it and bring it back later. You in the media space, you're already serving a purpose. One of those purposes is to present wonderful, accomplished men and women who are Nigerians. And everybody can say, this is what they have done. We see those things. And the media will report what you have said. That's what the media does. But again, we expect that others will do their bit. What do you do from the public side? The people in public space, do they manage to portray those kinds of values that will throw up Dr. Cole, Chief Olanikpeko, and say these are heroes for now? It doesn't. There are other values that make people very popular, make people very honored in our society, particularly today. And the truth is that the fact that things are bad today does not mean that things have always been bad. So we know where we're coming from, and we know that it can actually be changed or made better. What we ought to do, but move your microphone to the other side. What we ought to do is to continue on the track that you have taken. Recognize people who have accomplished things in society, people who have names in society. It is not just for the young people. That's only one half of that task. It is that those in places of authority would then have opportunity to think twice. What did Chief Olanikpeko do to make him an honoree? What did Dr. Cole do to make him an honoree and not me? Why not me? Why is it them? Until we get to that level of introspection, which will then force people, you talk of shaming, without anybody casting aspersions on you, you actually feel a sense of shame. That after all these years, nobody recognizes me. Nobody even values what I have done. And whereas these gentlemen who, it is not just that they don't have money like me, is that they didn't occupy the kind of position that I occupied, is that they didn't give the kind of things I gave to society from my view, and yet they are being honored. When we do that, the media continue to trump that, and other people, lights are shining in different angles. This is one angle, this is one corner. Eventually we'll get something that will catch on everywhere. Right now, it is not happening. And even you, I could read a certain despondency in your tone. That we have done this. Colloqium Motoshow was writing a column for me at The Guardian, 4 years only. Professor Motoshow was living in South Africa. And then one day he called me, he said he's not writing anymore. So I said, did we do anything wrong? He said, no. He said, I've read everything I've written for 4 years. And I've just checked our country and discovered that the country is worse now than it was 4 years ago. So I've been wasting my time. So I just started laughing. I said, Kole, you are unhappy with 4 years' work. This is our life. We have reported this. The people before us reported the same thing. The people before them reported the same thing. If all of us run away, the country will collapse. He then said, I got a message, I will keep writing. We must never despond on attempting to change the society. That's really where the work lies.
I think it was you I was having this conversation with that I talked about going going to Enugu.
Yes.
And getting in a car hire at the airport in Enugu. And this fellow had new breed, copies of new breed from the 70s inside a car hire. I said, how did you manage to keep? And he said, take and read some of the things you wrote. You obviously recognize that what you wrote in 1977. Do you know, I picked one of them up. As I was reading, I was going, my goodness, I can send this to the editor of The Guardian right now. And it would be like, I just wrote it from 1977. Incredible. Binga, how shall we fix this?
Thank you, Prof. I won't take up to a minute. You cannot impose on the media what is impossible for the media to do. The media largely reflects the society. It tries, but to recreate the society will be a very difficult task. Now, if other people don't do their duties, if the leadership continues to remain what it is, if there are no good public policies, if you don't do all of that, to recreate values become quite a challenge. Moreover, the media itself is struggling to survive. And of course, you look out for those persons, those role models that want to celebrate. Let me tell you the truth, Prof. The editor every day must think of what to drive his copy. If he doesn't drive his copy, it's not going to be in business. So yes, we'll celebrate Chivalry Pekun. We'll celebrate Dr. Ko as we always done. We'll celebrate Chief Oshoba. But when the big boys go to Dubai with all the tons of money, even when it is derisive, you have to publish them. I think the real challenge, the competition for us is to get more good men with great values being projected by all of us. Like it said, all of us have things to do. The MBA has a job to do. The NMA has a job to do. We have to revive those points of agitation for regeneration. You can't kill the civil society. I'm not talking of the Naira making type. I'm talking about the real civil society and expect to have a change. So that is it. The media will be there. In fact, it is worse now because, like I said earlier, with 100 Naira and access to phone, you can do evil on social media, and the media is judged by that. But so the media will continue to do its job largely as a mirror of this society. So what is in that mirror? That is the task for all of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to close this part of the program here. We're going to ask the honorees if they want to make a remark or two about the subject. They will make general remarks after we cut the cake and pop some bubbly. But if they want to, they can. But one little plea, I don't know if the CVL people will have them, but one of the things that we are trying to do to bridge this gap is to do what we call schools for the poor. And we go and build a school of the class that the richest send their children to in Lagos, the coronas of this world, in poor neighborhoods, and ensure they get the same quality of exposure without paying. We're building one in Delta. We've acquired some place in Ikorodu to do a similar school. And we'd be mighty pleased if you can support that effort. So they have some things they normally hand out where you can transmit support for building those schools. This morning, my daughter Isioma was on a board meeting with a UK partner that produces design and tech equipment for kids, design and tech, so that by the time they're in Form 2, Form 3, it's clear that they can be great design engineers and stuff like that. And they are supporting part of that effort. So we'd like to then invite Chivalry Pekun, if you want to, you don't have to, just a word about the subject, and then Dr. Ko.
What is it? Thank you, sir.
My dear brother and friend, Patrick told me, you've been a gentleman after my heart. I wouldn't know where you derive your energy from. It's so amazing. There was a time, I think you will remember, you were going to politics. You came to my office, then at off Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, that my brother, you want to contest? I said, okay. I told you, you will not win. I said you will not win, but I will vote for you, and I know that I will be wasting my vote because I believed and I still believe in you. There are few Nigerians who love this country. And I keep on saying it. At the last lecture I delivered, convocation lecture at Redeemers University, talking of new normal. How do we transit to a new normal? I said, do we have a present normal? The present normal is an abnormal normal. So how do you now transmit from an abnormal normal to a new normal? And my learned friend has spoken about the ground norm. We have problems. We don't have institutions. I will disagree with you. I would disagree with you a bit. Nigeria needs institutions. We don't need strong power, strong characters. We need strong institutions. Look at okay, that's your position. Mention a country, any country in the world that makes progress. It is because of the institutions. And when you're also talking of the institutions, the civil service, the public service, or whatever, even the private sector is also an institution. But my worry about Nigeria today is that when you and me were growing up, we had role models, we had mentors. We were proud to say that we were their mentees. We were running after them. We had politicians that we could call mentors. In our days in the Old West, the Awolowos of this world were our mentors. Though we didn't meet personally with them, we didn't shake hands with them, but we saw what they did, which impacted positively on us. My worry about Nigeria today is this. People do good. They are becoming endangered species. And you keep on wondering whether, is it normal for you to still be doing what you are doing? I want to appreciate you for honoring me. We listening to beautiful commentaries from the best you can assemble. Very best. And mention has been made of even the role of the media. Egbon, we are reading you. We are learning from you. I want to appreciate you for impacting on my life without you knowing. That's my Egbon, Oshoba, Aremo. And let me say this. There was a time I went to him when he was governor, 2003. I was president of the Nigerian Bar Association. I kept a night with him. I said, Egbon, you are dining with the devil. He said, no, I will overcome. He said, David and Goliath. I said, no, that was the days of David and Goliath. This Goliath will swallow you. Don't meet with them. He's here. He said, Wally, look, you are not a politician, you are a lawyer. I went at the end of the day, and I'm happy you acknowledged me in your book. The Goliath swallowed him. But I thank God. I thank God the whales didn't swallow you. You didn't die in the belly of the whales. Yeah. Egmont, right from the days, your days at the Herald, why during us due call, I took you as a role model. Remember that of Volkswagen. Remember the nocturnal parties. You will come with your Volkswagen. But even at that, even at the social events, you were my role model. And you stood your ground. The celebrated case of Ajayi against Quora Printing Companies Limited. Ajayi stood his ground.
despite the fact that Ini was a military dictator. He challenged him. He said, I will not do this as a journalist. It's against the ethics and ethos of my profession. He booted Ajayi, took him to court, and we had a robust judge. Justice Saidu Kawu was the chief judge of Kwara State. Bola Ige was counsel to Ajayi. AGF Abdul Assad was counsel to this printing company. Young lawyers who were going there to watch them display all the brilliance they had, and brilliant lawyers they were. Nowadays, who are the role models? Talking of journalism, and let me also say this, because in the past 2, 3, 4 weeks, just most sincerely, I've been in the news, social media, for doing what? Somebody said it took me to court. What's my crime? What's the genocide that I committed? What's the jurisprudential felony that he said I've committed? He said, I asked the Supreme Court to overrule itself. That is scholarship. It's done everywhere. Any lawyer cannot do that. It's timid. It's not worth to be a lawyer. I'm going to read the book, the foreword of one of the very best the Commonwealth has ever produced, Justice Kayode Esho, in a Williams, FRA Williams through the cases. He mentioned a litany of cases where she Williams will ask the Supreme Court to overrule itself. And according to him, he said that is courage, that is ingenuity, that is brilliance, that is profound advocacy, that is rugged, advocacy by any lawyer. And that he asked the question, what is law if law cannot solve the problem created by law? But people don't read. People don't do any research. Members of my family, they have been called, oh, what did this man do? What did I do? A case that cannot fly anywhere. But to journalists, do they read? Do they go through with all respect, unlike the good old days? Banning these even matters that I don't know, and when we say subjudice. And again, we want to put down characters. It didn't, it was, you don't build your character, you don't build your image, you don't build your integrity in 2, 3 days. But we have to be very careful. So across board, this country needs a rejig. The country needs a revolution, not military intervention. Not military intervention. We need a revolution. Every one of us, we have to do a rethink. Do we need a country, or do we want a country that we are going to bequeath, that we are going to hand over to the generations, to our own children? Was this the way we met Nigeria? What is happening in the political class, in the political climate, the political hemisphere? The 2 leading parties. Is that the way we met it? In the primary school, in the lower secondary school, we read of the Action Group, well-organized political party, NCNC, well-organized, NCP, Northern People Congress, rugged party. We're proud of them. What again? Even we're talking of, the facon of one party cannot listen to the far corner and vice versa. Then what do? Very apt. Very apt. What do we do? The question is a question begging for answer, yearning for answer. Nigeria is asleep. The truth must be told. And few people, because of what they will eat, few people speak the truth nowadays. But it's for each and every one of us. This country is a big elephant. We must not allow it to fall. And those of us, people of our own generation, we benefited from this country, from good governance, from good government. And it behoves us also to, in the words in the Yoruba, so to sorosoke anytime the opportunity beckons. Once again, I want to appreciate. It's a honor that I appreciate. It's a honor that I value. It's a honor that I covet. And Egmont, you have to continue with what you are. God give you, God bless you, God will keep you. Leadership, sir, it's not when you go to, you have to demonstrate it anywhere we are, you and me. And I can say to the glory of God, I was appointed, I was made pro-chancellor of the oldest university in this country, Ibadan. And I told them, I'm coming here. I told them, I called Bamiro, I called all the members. Let us remind ourselves, as I then over 600 professors. And I told them, here I'm not coming to take a dime. I'm not going to take an allowance. I'm not going to take, just like the prophet of old, Samuel, he was asking the Israelites. He said, I was judge over you. Did I take your sheep? Did I take your oxen? Did I take your wife? And I told them, I'm not going to take anything from you. Rather, I will add there. But what am I saying? What homily am I preaching? Not like the Catholic priest. Yeah. But when I go to UI today, I'm so proud of the reception I receive. I get anytime. I'm not saying, they gave me a honorary title, a honorary degree, doctorate degree. I value it more than anything. I don't want to be president of Nigeria. I don't want to be a minister. No, I don't want to be. I don't want to be. But I want a country that is well governed. I want a country that I will be proud of. I want a country that I'll be loyal. There is no fidelity. Let us face it. When we were young, there was fidelity between us and our nation. But now there is none, except we want to deceive ourselves. There is fidelity to you, to your nation, to your ethnic group, to whether you are Yoruba, whether you are Fulani, and at times to your religion. And what did Karl Marx say about religion? Opium of the people. Thank you. God bless you.
I'm glad I'm an old man that I don't have the problems you guys seem to be having. Because, at our age, whatever energy we have, we reserve it for, just walking from your bedroom to the toilet, that's enough. But I thank you for calling this. And the theme about professionalism and its role in the development of the political regime, I guess that's what you're talking about. I think it's best illustrated by one example. But before I give you the example, first we must decide what are these values? What are Nigeria's values? I think that as you move from one area to the other, they tend to change. And because they change, the society around it has to blend with the new way in which things are working. The civil service which I joined was a very professional service. And you could look the, general or whoever it was, right in the face, and you say to him, no, we can't do that, sir. And he will beat his hand in his chest and say, but I'm in the military government, that goes on and on and on. So, well, I don't care where you are, but you're not going to be able to do this. General Murtala Mohammed was in charge of communications. And he walked to Mr. C.O. Lawson's office. And he said that he had just sacked the DG of NITEL, Akindele. Okay. Okay. PAMSEC, yeah. Anyway. when he got into cabinet office, he was puffing and the secretary said the secretary of government was busy. Could he please sit down while he was told that this minister was waiting? Say, you're not sitting down. The woman looked at him and said, you will sit down, sir. Nobody walks into his office until he tells me to let me. He sat down. I was drinking his coffee. It helped. I think the tea helped to calm his. I walked in and he said to Mr. Lawson, what's all this? I sacked the DG of NITEL and he's still going to work. Mr. Lawson said, please sit down. Have you had some tea? And it went on like this. So I didn't come here for tea. I'm telling you that this is a military government. When we sack somebody, we sack somebody. Mr. Lawson looked at him and said, yes, okay. So I presume you said he was DG of NITEL. I said, yes. And he's not in the army, is he? He said, no. He said, and he doesn't work for you, does he? He said, but he works for a federal government. I'm a federal minister. So that's not the issue. Does he work for you? He says, no, not directly. He said, good. It doesn't work for you. And therefore, you cannot sack him. Now, I can tell you stories like that because, well, Mr. C.O. Lawson, not many people remember him at all, but he went to Oxford, and the kind of people who were milling around then, their CODs and their leaders were, specially trained as if they are working in the British civil service. But things, the strength of the civil servant always is the ability to marshal his point and convince whoever his political boss is that this is the right thing to do. The failure to do that is because too often the political boss has heard something from outside and is brought a rumor in, and he wants to upturn the whole of the office. Doesn't work. But if, ironically, you know how to deal with the civil service, you probably get away with murder, which they do. And the press in itself, as an aside, first of all, I don't think they pay them enough for the kind of job we're asking them to do. If you want somebody to be strong on principle, you have to pay him. He cannot be living in Ajegunle and then he has a meeting in Lekki and it takes him 5 hours to get there. And you expect that when he's leaving, somebody gives him 10,000 naira, he would tell, no, sir, I would rather walk. When I say the civil service is useful, there are, as you can see, as at this point in time, there are so many quangos. So quangos are institutions that government set up when they want to divert funds and do whatever they like. The civil service has failed, I think, to take government on issues such as I'm about to mention now. There's something called the Federal Character Commission. Has anybody ever read a report from the Federal Character Commission? Have you? So then they have things like the Education Trust Fund, the Petroleum Trust Fund, this fund or the other. The oil producing areas have a difficulty of their area being despoiled by the environment. And so we set up the NDDC. The NDDC was supposed to be a technical organization that was supposed to actually carry out repair systems for the ecological right. Not only do they not do that, now, in order to set this thing up, we had been to Holland, to the Tennessee Authority in the United States, and to the Welsh Development Authority. These were the models that were used. The point I'll go into a little bit of detail for this because I want you to see how detailed the civil servant actually works. And if the result is different from what he's done, it's not him. And the Tennessee Valley Authority provides electricity for something like 1/20th of the United States. It's a civil service organization. In Amsterdam and in Rotterdam, there are organizations by the civil service that control the dam, the water level, how to open the sluice so that the ships can go in and all that. So we thought it was a delta. We'll be able to copy what they were doing there. The Welsh is the same thing. If you remember, I think it was the first bill that General Obasanjo sent to the National Assembly. In the passage, we had asked for professionals. For it to pass, the governors had insisted that they should have representatives on the board. The rest of the story, you know. They've done absolutely nothing since then, and they cannot do anything. Not only do they have done nothing, because a lot of money, you know, was passing through there, something called the Northwest Development Corporation reared its head, and it also passed. I can go on and on and on, but there's no need, because I challenge you. In 1966, people in the North did a pogrom. They killed Southerners in their thousands, in their hundreds. I don't think anybody here of the level that we are talking does not know a Northerner. But nobody that I know of, at least where I've been there, has ever challenged the Northerner to say, by the way, what did you people think you were doing in 1966? Of course, in 1967, the coup took place, and the Northern Premier and the, you know, Salana and all those who died. And somehow or the other, Okpara didn't die. Osadebe didn't die. And yeah, they killed Colloqium and all that. Basically, the story as we now had, you know, here, because it has become a tribal thing. Igbos killed Northern leaders. Northern leaders killed Igbo children. Now, what is the equality that's going on there? If you want to kill, if they kill your leaders, why are you killing their children? You should go and kill their leaders. That conversation has not taken place, and I dare say it won't take place. And nobody should be telling me about values when people do wrong and you do not hold them to justice. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because this is not the first country where these things have happened. All what we have achieved in doing is that when you raise an issue, all of us become tribal about it. Tribal, not in the sense of where you come from, but tribal in your response to the problem that's on the ground. In 1974, we introduced the universal primary education. Now, that law is not gender bound. It's not gender bound. It's not it insists that all children should go to school. There were a few things about it that didn't work well. It was 6, 3, 3, 4, or something like that. At the end of your SSS, you went into either technical or the other. The people who opposed that law were from the North. As one of them said to me, but who is going to serve us if all of you go to school? That thinking is still dominant today. And it is the thinking that makes what is palpably unjust possible in Nigeria. If you come from Benin and you want to go to University of Lagos, you have to have, for entrance, 296 points. If you come from Zamfara, you can go with 2. What kind of a country is that? Same class? Same university? No, but the press has stopped talking about that a long time ago. It's not that it has been bought over by the oligarchs. That's a famous word nowadays. But they don't pay them enough to take the risk to ask those questions. And as I said, you yourself as a Nigerian, what are your values? Are those values being reflected in government? If they are not, the easiest thing, okay, you complain about the university civil service. When I was working in the civil service, I was being paid, I guess, maybe at that level, maybe nearly 3,000 naira or something pounds, where 3,000 then probably equal 6,000 pounds, which was higher than what I was getting in Cambridge. I had a house, I had a car. Today, that level of independence does not exist for the civil service. One of these flashes of military brilliance, where permanent secretaries and civil servants have been staying in Koyi and everywhere else, you sell them off. Of course, that's good for the economy of Lagos. But what does that do for the next set of civil servants? Where will they stay? How will they stay? And what do you expect them to do? You cannot expect somebody to be an angel. All the people around him are devils. I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We'll move quickly because we want to save on time. Okay. So, Chief Olanikbo will be here in a minute, and we will come to this part of ceremony. But just before that, the school that we are building in Delta, show 2 minutes. The kids already are there in the school. While the school is being built, they're using some temporary accommodation that we have set up. So we'll very much welcome your generosity in supporting the project. I think the details of the account are there. Well, the auditorium hall, whatever it is we can call this. And we'll skip the usual full documentary that's now, but it's on the internet so we can follow them. We'd just like to invite Aremo Shegun Oshoba to come and superintend the cutting of this cake by the celebrants. Okay, so let me invite the Dr. Patrick Dele-Cole, the boss man. And Oluwole Olanikbeku. Yeah, buddy, you can come and represent the generation. Oh, okay. Some place. It's always in the waka. So, somebody get the knife. It's here. It's in the proper place. And I'll hand the microphone to Aremo.
Well, first I want to apologize to the whole house that they didn't invite me. I didn't know about this ceremony until I was at the meeting of the Newspaper Proprietors Association in Ikeja. And Benga came to whisper to me that he will have to take over at 12:30. I said, for what? To attend the ceremony for Chief Beko and Dr. Cole. What? If they are honored, I should be first to be there. And Patomi is my president. The president I never had, but the president that we will still have. So I apologize. I had to wait till the end of the meeting before coming to join you. And I've been sitting since 10 o'clock. My leg, after total knee replacement, is still not too functional. I apologize. Well, you give me a ceremony to a great. Simple. I just said to Wale and Dele, and then they called the well, the two of them are Christians. In the name of the Father, the two of you, yeah. Church. In the name of the Father, I didn't hear the amen. Amen. And in the name of the Son, and this Baba Joe and the leader in the church, he's built many churches too. And in the name of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you know this well. Come and pop some champagne. But it's something I'm going to get both of the honorees to do. They're going to pray for the youth of Nigeria. White Horse. I said I should just forward that the news is cast out that the problem of Nigeria is because we have poured so much libation that our ancestors are so, come begin to pour them. Yes. Please, okay. Pop this one. Just to go around. Okay. So just pour into any glass. Okay, let me pour for this. Microphone, I say right here.
Well, hope everybody is served. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure on behalf of Center for Values in Leadership to propose this toast to these are leaders without titles for what they have done to us, for our society, for role modeling, so that those of us who are coming behind, especially the younger ones, and that's a very serious one, the millennials, they have points, learning points to pick from, that indeed in Nigeria, it's not all about money, it's not all about gangsterism, in actual fact, it's not all about power. There are so many people who have done so many great things, and to that to which we celebrate, and we wish them well for better life, for longer life, and for them to remain for us for years to come. Cheers. Thank you.
One day. You have to open them now.
Give me instruction.
Yes.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Somebody has to hold. Somebody has to hold.
Yes.
Nigeria now much of this.
Look now here. See, the ancestors, they don't understand English.
Nigeria amatemeso. Awesome. Amatemeso Yoruba wasn't Birenama amatemeso. Papigosim. Ogonangarapo. Papigosim. Mirumom nanye. Obu. Loko Nadina Kewapre. Simply what I've just said, I've just called important gods and I've asked them that they should drink and not be drunk. And they should give us peace.
Yes, we need it.
So I will now drink first, this one. But we have not finished. Because there are good spirits and there are bad spirits. So the bad spirits, we say when you are passing, don't look this side.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Basically, what is left is maybe, shall we, not a vote of thanks, but a remark from, you've made contributions to the conversation, or the theme of the day, but just any remark, any advice to young people or whatever, just closing remark or whatever you want, 1 minute or whatever.
Thank you, Prof. My plea is that those of us of this generation, we should pray for the success of our children. And when I say our children, I mean these young ones, horizontally, vertically, from all over the nation. I said it earlier, that even including those who are in government today, whether at the federal or state levels, we have benefited from this country. We have crossed the bridge, but we want to collapse it to deny these young ones from having the access, the opportunities, the advantages, the privileges we have, and from accessing them. Success without a successor is a failure. And may Nigeria not end as a success without a successor. And we must not advertently or inadvertently, deliberately or otherwise, consciously or cautiously, do things that would deny these children from taking over from us. We must appreciate the fact that life is a relay race. 4 people do a relay race. First leg, second leg, third leg, the last leg. They exchange the baton. That is just what life is. Our fathers passed over the baton to us. The baton they didn't drop. But we want to drop the baton without passing to our children. May God forbid this adventure. May God forbid this plan. May God change the hearts of our leaders and our own hearts as well. And to our children, to this younger generation, I pray that we'll be taller than us, we'll be fatter than us, we'll be greater than us, we'll be more successful than us. And may God, if you read the Bible, there was famine in the land of Israel. The land of Egypt. The Israelites were there, but God created a Goshen for them. May God create and make a Goshen for you. Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you so much. The plaques. Yeah, so we'll just present plaques to you now. Kabiesi, I'd like to kindly invite you, if you will please come forward. We'll give you a plaque to present to the honorees from CVL on behalf of CVL for memorial of their contribution. Kindly, yes, let KBC take it and a hand to each of them.
On behalf of the organizers of this occasion, that's Leaders Without Title, which you have duly earned, I have the privilege to present this plaque to you, Chief Oleolanipekun, SAN. on behalf of the organizers of this event, Dr. Patrick Deleco. Oh, is it Professor? Professor Deleco. Okay, yes. So on behalf of the organizers, I have the pleasure and privilege to present to you this plaque, a recognition as a leader without a title.
Thank you, Kamis. Okay. I guess everything is done. We just to express our appreciation to all of you for taking time to come out and join us as we do this, which we consider a very, very important rite of passage for the generations to come to recall that there were people before them. Thank you all. Thank you and God bless. Sorry, there are refreshments.
So what is that oil that God has given you? It might be a business skill. It might be whatever it is He has put in your hand. God said, don't despise it. That small thing that you have in your hand, it can multiply. God is going to multiply it. That's your small oil. He would multiply it. The question is, do you believe Him? Do you believe Him? So God has given you oil.